Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. I'm Justin. I'll be your primary host tonight, and with me is Brett. A rare episode not featuring Cody for once. And yeah, we're here to talk a bit about a game, a prequel to a fairly high-profile release that either will be out or coming out shortly when this airs. But before we get to that, let's find out what's new, what's been going on. So, Brett, what's new in your world?
Sick with COVID. It was lots of
Mhm.
fun. Just
I hear that.
yeah, I thought you might. Yeah. Um, the first I had like a year and a half ago, and like that time was kind of a breeze. I just like it was just very mild symptoms, and this time it hit me hard. Like I had one day where I I dropped the kids off at school, and I came home and I like tried to be a human and could not human,
Oh,
and so I went back to sleep. I slept until I picked the kids up from school. So
oh
I
man.
slept for like, I don't even know, like 18 hours that day or something crazy. It was just like my whole day. Um, thankfully I'm past that now, but uh
Oh, good.
in happier news, and this is actually old news for me, but I finally beat Starfield. I just
Hey.
haven't had a chance to discuss it yet. And I was actually thinking I might do like a write up on our little message thing on our website here or something, but I haven't gotten around to doing that. But a quick and dirty bit of it. I really enjoyed it. I could definitely see how it would not be for everyone because
Mhm.
there's lots of sections where there's lots of just dialogue. And there's interesting dialogue in the game, but it also feels a bit dry at the same time at points.
Huh.
And so I could see somebody who is not big into like listening through a bunch of dialogue and then making conversational choices could get tired of the game quickly. But I enjoyed it. I'd probably give it like an 8 out of 10. It's pretty good. And then almost immediately after finishing that game, I purchased and installed Pal World. So
Ah, nice.
I've been grinding that out here for the last 2 to 3 weeks or something like that. And I've been really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those kind of games where yeah, I'm probably like halfway through at this point. So I can safely say like what it is. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a greatly made game, but it's a very, very fun game. And so it's like it doesn't always your game doesn't always have to be like super high quality and like everything it does to still be really enjoyable. And that's the point that, and I mean it's fair to say as well that this is still early release technically. It's not actually technically a full release game at this point, um but yeah, that's most of what I've been spending my time with right now. How about you?
Nice. Yeah, that reminds me, I need to get back to Pal World. I played it for a bit and then kind of got derailed because of the game we're going to be talking about today.
Sure.
And then after, during that period, the announcement of the Elden Ring DLC dropped, and it's just like, oh man, I need to
Yes.
get back into Souls likes. So I've actually been playing the reboot of Lords of the Fallen, not the one that came out on the PS4, but the one that came out last year,
Mhm.
and it's actually pretty good. Very different take on the whole. I think it takes place in the same world, but it's a completely different set of mechanics than in the first one. It doesn't feel like when you're swinging your weapon, you're swinging it through like soup. You actually have responsive combat. There's an interesting sort of the medium like world switching mechanic where you've got this lamp that lets you see kind of into the world of the dead, or the Umbra it's called.
Hmm. Okay.
And so sometimes it'll be like, oh, I wonder if this wall exists in the Umbra, and sometimes it's not. It's like a secret passage. And sometimes when you're just checking stuff like that out, something will notice you and like lunge at you, in this shadowy half world. And you're like, it dropped the lamp, and it just disappears, and you see like little dust like footprints like going past you as it stumbles past where you are. Really cool effect.
That's
Um,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, and sometimes you need to go fully into it. You don't just have it where the light's shining. You actually transport into that area, and you have to do that to get through certain areas. But there's this like risk reward kind of thing regarding it where it's not quite a timer, but the longer you're there, the more things start to notice you, and enemies will just spawn like out of the terrain and stuff. So you ideally want to get where you're going and get out as quick as you can, but it's not always an option. So it injects a neat bit of tension I've never really seen done quite that way in a Souls-like. I'm not done with it yet. I don't know how far I am in it, but I've been enjoying the heck out of it. So if you were on the fence, it's a pretty solid take on the genre, even though it's not made by FromSoft.
Hmm.
So that's been kind of my main focus gaming wise recently, besides what we're about to talk about today. Other than that, as of this recording, the news dropped yesterday that Akira Toriyama died, the creator of Dragon Ball, the character designer for the Dragon Quest games, for Chrono Trigger, a man who had a tremendous impact on the gaming, anime, just geek culture industry in general. So I've finally taken that as a reason to finally start watching Dragon Ball Super. I watched a ton of Dragon Ball Z growing up, to the extent where uh, it was airing on Toonami, but there was also this channel on cable that we got called the International Channel, and they were like a bit further ahead than what Toonami was showing, but it was all in Japanese. So like every
Hmm.
week I would print out translations of the episodes, and my dad and I would sit there and watch them together, and I would like read off what the characters were saying, and just wonderful memories of what it really boils down to, muscly men and aliens screaming at each other until like mountains collapse. But Dragon Ball is fun, and super. It's holding up. It brings back a lot of that nostalgia that I remember from the Toonami days and all that. Uh, so yeah, the world lost a wonderful person recently, and if you haven't experienced any of his work, pick up a Dragon Quest game. Watch an episode of Dragon Ball Z, see if any of it appeals to you, because the man has had more impact on the world than you or I ever will, I'm sure. Um, so yeah, but speaking of games, that brings us to what we're talking about tonight. And I don't know exactly when the sequel drops, but tonight we're talking about Dragon's Dogma, a game that when it released sort of flew under the radar, but in the years since it developed quite a cult following, and with a fairly high profile sequel right around the corner, it seemed like a perfect opportunity to revisit the original, or visit the original, as it were, and see if it holds up, see if it deserves the notoriety or the fame that it has.
See if it deserves a sequel.
Yes, yeah. See, if it was just a fluke, or if there's actually something here.
Hmm.
Um,
It
so
looks
be
like the official release date for the sequel is March 22nd. So 2 weeks from today's recording, actually.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, man, March is such a packed month for games.
Mhm.
Um, so before we really get into it, had you really heard much about this game, the series, before we decided to showcase it, or were you fairly new to it?
I had basically just heard the name. I knew very little about it. I had seen a brief amount of gameplay, just enough to kind of get a feel for what it was. And yeah, that was really about it. So,
Okay. I was in a similar boat, and I mean, I knew like it was an action RPG. I knew it had some sort of strange online component called the pawn system, which didn't make a whole lot of sense just reading about it. And I also knew this game kind of suffered from what I have taken to calling Battleborn syndrome, even though this whole thing happened years after Dragon's Dogma came out. So what I mean by that is it released around the same time as another much higher profile, much more beloved game. With Battleborn, that happened to release just before Overwatch. Overwatch destroyed it. No one remembered Battleborn. No one played it.
mm-hmm.
For this, Dragon's Dogma actually came out roughly a year after a little game you may have heard of called Dark Souls. And
Oh, that little thing.
and looking at them, I mean, they visually and just at a glance, they seem very similar. And I think that is a big part of why I never gave this game a shot before now, because it's like, oh well, I already have this amazing thing. Why would I go for what seems like kind of a cheaper imitation? Um, but also, as it turns out, in terms of this whole Battleborn syndrome that I coined, uh, the two games don't really play that much alike. That was true for Battleborn and Overwatch, and it's certainly true for Dragon's Dogma and Dark Souls. So if you're unfamiliar with the game, Dragon's Dogma it's a kind of a generic feeling high fantasy setting, where there's dragons, there's goblins, there's high adventure, there's hidden treasures, that sort of thing. And it's a pretty open world. Like you can go almost anywhere at any time, which is kind of nice. And the overall story, well, it kind of just throws you into the middle of it. It's essentially Dragonheart the game in a way, minus Sean Connery. A dragon attacks your town, kind of lays waste to it. You try to fight back, and it just bodies you and steals your heart. uh
Literally.
Literally steals your heart, just like sticks a claw into your chest, goes blink, this is mine now. And then you hear its voice in your head, basically. I don't even remember what it says, but it's like taunting you, like, if you think you can get this back, you'll have to come and get it or something like that. And he just flies off like a jerk. And apparently this is all tied into some sort of old prophecy that the dragon will come and lay waste to the world. And you, since you've had your heart stolen and sort of come back to life, you are kind of filling the role of something called an arisen. And an arisen isn't quite the same as like a tarnished from Elden Ring, or I'm forgetting what they were called in Dark Souls. But
Mm,
you're not quite a chosen one, but you're special. And thus begins your quest from this little fishing village, kind of off to on the edges of the map, to try to save the world. And what did you think of just like the overall setup? Because to me, it honestly felt a little generic, but it I felt like it at least got the job done. How about you?
yeah, I mean, I could see that as it's kind of like, all right, we got a dragon in this game. Let's have it just like destroy everything, and and then have the heroes say, "Well, I guess we gotta take care of this dragon now." In that sense, it is very, very stereotypical. Um, I didn't really have any problem with it. The part of it, the dragon like taking hearts, I thought was kind of that was kind of its unique thing that kind of set it apart a little bit. Although I did have the question of like why it's doing that. I think it
Yeah,
was never really clear. It almost seemed to be like like the dragon was almost like doing it because he like wanted to die. He's like, okay, I'm gonna make you a superhuman so that someone can actually finally kill me.
yeah,
Because it didn't seem like it. I mean, and maybe it was in there and I just missed that bit of the story, but it
yeah.
didn't seem like it was like giving the dragon extra abilities
No,
necessarily. I don't know. Or
yeah,
like
and
prolonging its life, or I don't
yeah,
know.
maybe I missed that too. Because yeah, you make a good point. And yes, there's this whole like prophecy, but I don't remember the game ever really spelling out piece by piece exactly what the prophecy was. It's like
Mm,
the dragon will return, and then the arisen will rise to fight it. But it's just like, yeah, the heart thing doesn't really make a lot of sense unless there was a side quest or some lore that we both missed in playing it.
yeah, I
Um,
think there seemed to be a fair amount of like lore and backstory and stuff out there, but to be perfectly honest, I was trying to complete this game as quickly as possible. So I didn't dive too deeply into that stuff. So
Yeah. And yeah, since I knew we were on a time crunch, I kind of tried to fast track my way through it too. I did
yeah.
a fair number of side quests, but I'm sure this is a game that I wouldn't mind revisiting just to see some of that stuff that I missed.
Mhm.
Um, because I, I'm hoping at some point in there it's also explained what the pawns are. Now the pawns are kind of this game's major mechanic. They are and this is also really what sets it aside, apart from Dark Souls, aside from there being actual towns with people that you can interact with. Dark Souls was always a very solitary experience. You could call in friends occasionally under certain circumstances for boss fights, but otherwise it's you against the world. Dragon's Dogma is the polar opposite of that. You don't really adventure with your friends, with other humans, but there are these AI controlled, not quite humans, but sort of human-ish creatures called pawns.
Mhm.
Uh, and I don't really know why they exist, what exactly they are, why they look so human if they're not human. I mean, maybe there is a bit of lore in the game that fleshes that out, but
Mhm.
they're there. They can talk. They can fight. They can interact with you, but they're not really human. It's weird.
Yeah, the dialogue
And
in the game made like those same points. Like, like even like
yeah,
the game itself was kind of like, we don't know what these are exactly, but they're here.
yeah,
They're here to help you, so utilize them.
yep. And they emerge from this like shadowy underworld that you can venture into to recruit more. And it's just like, eh?
And they're
Uh,
like, there's unlimited supply, also
yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
I should say that at least when this game first came out, and I think to some extent now, though it doesn't have the player base it once did, I'm sure, the pawns are all made by other people, aside from like a few
Right.
stock ones. So like the first one I recruited from, just out in the wild, so to speak, was this little dwarf-looking guy whose name was Tequila, who had like a broadsword and no shield, and he would just like run headlong into everything, and it was interesting just seeing what was out there. And
Yeah,
I would say, oh, go on.
I was just gonna say that was like you say, it's kind of like the game's big unique thing. And it is something that I really did enjoy about it, that you kind of like you're picking teammates based on characters that other people have created, which is it's a really pretty cool system. And like when I was going through and choosing pawns for my team, I always kind of there was like I'd see one that had like some crazy name, and I'd be like, oh, I gotta go check this guy. and and then like kind of some of the polar opposite would be like you see someone who like has a very stereotypical kind of like fantasy name, and you're like, oh, this guy's probably taking the game serious. This this character is probably built really well.
Mhm.
And so I would kind of those are the two that I would kind of go for.
Yeah. And yeah, they depending on how they were made, they would have different classes. I think the pawns were a bit more limited than the main character, but you had your standard like fighter type, and then an improved version of that, and like a mage improved version of that, and then archer, and
Mhm.
so on. And I think it's worth mentioning. I thought at least the AI for these guys was surprisingly well done.
Yes.
I was going into it as like, oh no, I'm playing through an entire game with a bunch of AI companions. They're going to be stupid. I'm going to have to like escort them through everything. But no,
Right.
they'll like go in and they'll grab human-sized enemies and they'll be like, go ahead, strike the killing blow, or they'll like pick up
Mhm.
stuff from the environment and use it, or just really blew me away. They'll climb on the backs of bigger creatures and like start hacking away at their heads and stuff. It's a really robust system that they developed here, and I was not expecting that.
Yeah, that
Uh,
would be one of the biggest pluses I had for this game as well, is that um just your teammates, you didn't have to, well, first of all, you really couldn't choose what they did. They were completely autonomous. Like it
yeah,
wasn't like a like Dragon Age where you can give them commands or something like that. They just do whatever they want, but it was fine because they made really good choices most of the time.
yeah.
They're using spells at the appropriate times. They are so like one of the other cool mechanics of this game is that your mages can like enchant your weapons. If your
Mhm.
fighter classes, the mages can like enchant their weapons with like elemental damage, and they would do that like right on the button at the start of a fight all the time. It was like
Mhm.
that is good job, guys. That's exactly what I need to hear.
Yeah,
And yeah, they would always be like, my mage would always be applying a healing spell when needed. It was just like, yeah, these these teammates are actually helping me out considerably here. So
Yeah, yeah. And there is that also leads into another mechanic with the pawns is that they learn as they go. Like you could, recruit a pawn that from some random person who is a bit further in the game, and then take a side quest, and he'll be like, "Oh, I know where that is. Follow this road," and
Yeah,
just yeah, it just really unique in terms of the approach. Like they had knowledge and like skills. Is like, oh, you're fighting a chimera. Make sure you kill the goat so it doesn't cast magic. That kind of thing. And
yeah. The
it's
quest tips were really cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, if you're a person who doesn't like having anything spoiled and you like to figure things out for yourself, that might be kind of a negative for you. But in general, it was, and sometimes it was like the weirdest stuff. Like, um, I think at one point I was fighting like an ogre or a troll or something, and legitimately, I kid you not, one of the things that one of my pawns, cries out. One of the ones I had I had hired was the sight of women enrages it or something like that.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, wait, what?
I heard that one more than once too.
So it's
Yeah,
a weird and quirky world that they've built up here that Capcom has done. Um, but I will say a lot of personality, a lot of really interesting mechanics. What were your thoughts on the overall story? I mean, should we? Yeah, let's lead with that question, and then we'll get into what the story actually was beyond the setup.
sure. Yeah. Um, I I liked the story well enough. In the end, I felt like there wasn't a lot to the story.
Hmm.
It was uh like if you're just kind of like mainlining the main quest, just straight line through, like which I did because as we said, we were kind of on a time crunch and didn't want to spend 70 hours on this game, which you easily
Hmm.
could
Oh
or
yeah.
more. Um, yeah, not doing a lot of the side quests and things. To me, it felt like the story was kind of light, but um, but overall, I enjoyed it. I
Okay.
think it was fine for a story. Yeah,
I yeah, I agree with you on the overall lightness of things because really when it starts off, okay, you've got that grand, opening with the dragon just wrecking your village and stealing your heart and you're out for revenge and to try to, become whole again. And then you make your way to this little, to the nearest town. It gets attacked by a cyclops. You fight that off. A hydra attacks. You fight that off. And then, really, the bulk of the story from that point on, like the main story, is you're delivering the Hydra's head to the Duke.
hmm
Dot dot dot. Confrontation with dragon. Uh, that's really kind of it. I mean, once
yeah,
you deliver that, you're stuck doing kind of like jobs, quests, whatever around
yeah.
town
To get
until
into the Duke's good graces.
yep. And then he
Yeah,
gives you what seems like it's going to be, oh, I've unlocked the end game because he gives you like worm hunter quests, which are it's like before you take these, you have to I mean you have to abandon a bunch of other stuff, make sure you're ready. And you do a few of those. And then you finally get to go off and get your quest to kill the dragon. You can do a few other things in the meantime, but that's pretty much it. It's dragon attacks, you almost die. Hydra attacks, you kill it, deliver head, and then while away a few hours until you get the go ahead to go after the dragon. It's like, really? And yes, there are a lot of side quests, but go ahead.
I just spending some time with the Duke's wife.
I swear this game wants you to sleep with her so bad. It, I don't know. Maybe if you're playing a female character, maybe she doesn't immediately like give you the bedroom eyes from across the courtyard, but
I don't know. That'd be interesting to find out.
yeah, it's just I didn't go that route because somehow I ended up with another wife or at least life
Okay,
partner.
interesting.
Yeah, and there is a relationship mechanic in this game. I'm not 100% sure how it decides who you end up with.
I don't either because like I didn't really talk to anyone at all. Like
Well, who did you end up with out of curiosity?
the person who it said you are like with
Mhm.
was the Duke's wife, but I didn't like I did zero of anything like like trying to earn her good graces or I was just like
Huh.
I'm just trying to do quests here, lady. And she's like, "Look." me. And I'm like, I'm busy. Sorry.
Yeah, she's given you an invitation to meet her in her tower alone. It's like, no, I'm not falling into that trap. Thanks.
Did you actually do that though?
I did not. I
I
considered it.
did.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, I'm like, well, I gotta go check this out. Yeah.
I just at that point I had a hedge witch living in my house. The one
Okay.
who you find in like the cursed wood or whatever, where
Oh
I had met
yeah.
her. I had met her once. I saved her from getting burned at the stake, and apparently that's all it took. So
Nice. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, I really. I'm sure there's some like underlying mechanical explanation for who you end up with, but I'll be damned to find out what
Mm,
it is.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, you do get some interesting side quests if you do delve into them, and that I think is the main appeal of the story of this game because the baseline quest is very bare bones. Um, Even when they throw in like the evil cult that likes the dragon and stuff, it's like it doesn't entirely feel special. Some of the side ones though
Mm.
I liked. Um, but let's see. So we talked a little bit about the game mechanics with the pawns and stuff. You were playing on PC, I'm guessing, yeah?
I was, yes.
Okay. Was it as buggy an experience for you as it was for me?
It was it felt a little janky, a little wonky. Yeah.
Okay.
The port to PC was fine, but it seemed like they didn't really do anything to improve the PC experience.
Hmm.
They're just like, okay, here's as it was on the console. We're just going to give you inputs to do those same things on PC.
Okay.
And that was like when I first started playing, I actually was struggling a bit because there's things like in the menus, intuitively on a PC game, you're like, oh, click here, click here, click there. And the game's like, no, you
Nope.
can't do that. I
Yeah,
don't know what you're trying to do, but that's not going to do it.
for like a good portion of the menus, like the at least when you're making a character, like the option to save what you've done, it's the backspace key by
Yes,
default.
it took me forever to even figure that out.
Yeah, because
Dude,
it shows like a little, a rectangle with an arrow on it. It's like
yeah,
press this to confirm. I thought
yeah,
that was return. Nope.
exactly. Yeah. I was like,
And
man,
it's
I feel like I've seen that icon before, but I have no idea what that is.
Yep, and it's like that all the time in that section, except when it shuts down the game without giving you an option to confirm. There's like one
Oh
one
my god.
spot where it says go back or like cancel, and you press it, and it's just like boop.
Oh no.
And yeah,
Thankfully I didn't get that.
uh that kind of mechanical jank was that was throughout this. Like there's a spot where you're I think it's during the dragon fight where there's ballistas and you can like you're trying to hit the dragon. It
Mhm.
tells you that throughout all the game to do anything, there's like key prompts, like pick this thing up. It's like the E button, or
Yep.
activate this lever, whatever. Here it's like stand in the ballista. So it's that, and then nothing. The attack button
Mm,
doesn't shoot. The secondary attack button doesn't shoot. The E button
right.
doesn't shoot.
It's F.
It's F. Like what the? I had to look that up, and it's just. Whoever did the PC port of this needs their head examined because some of it is unintuitive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
And the fact
beyond, oh
there
yeah,
was like well just I mean this also I obviously was like a console thing, but the fact that there's no save slots like
yes,
really kind of mess with my head at times. It's just like one save and
hmm
there's nothing you can if something gets if there's an issue with it somewhere or if like you just like I missed a quest completely that you're talking about the witch hunt quest.
yeah.
I bypassed that and didn't realize I would never get it again.
Oh
And so
man,
I never got to do that. And it's like, well, I've only have one save file, so I can't go back and like try and get to a
yep.
point where I can get back and do that. So it was gone.
Well, I'll see that experience and raise you. So I was doing I randomly went back to the town where you start the game, and I was like, oh, there's other quests here that I didn't get before, and one of them is escorting this old man to some settlement off to the west. So I'm like, all right, sure, yeah, that'll open up more of the map, and my pawns seem pretty capable. They'll keep the monsters away and whatnot. Um, Turned out it was a longer jaunt than I expected, so I saved partway through and just left. Come back to my game, load the save, and everything's fine for a second. And all of a sudden, the old man just goes, ah, and falls over dead. And it happened every time I reloaded that save.
Oh no.
I could not complete that quest because he just randomly had a heart attack while my computer was turned off.
It's wild.
Yeah, so this
Oh
game
my
is kind of
goodness.
I think the best way to describe it would be a glorious mess. Um, because even like during combat, like when things are functioning the way they're supposed to, it's it's a mess. Like if you have a full team of like three pawns, it'll be like frequent little bullet time motions where it'll be like, I've grabbed him, hit him
Mm,
now, and then the next
right.
one will be like, take fire on your weapon, and it's just like it constantly pulls you out of the flow of it, and
Yeah, those are
weird.
fun little kind of cinematic almost style moments. But
Mhm.
I agree. There was usually it wasn't bad, but there was a few times during the game where it was just like nonstop. It was one thing and then another thing and then another thing. I'm like, I'm just
Yep.
trying to play the game, man. Can I play
Yep.
this game and not have to like suffer through these?
It's like, no, Arisen, you must look over here now.
Yeah.
uh and it's similar to that. I've got like a list of weird, crazy shit that happened.
I have a
There
few
was
as well.
like sometimes the pawns would not shut up, including like the ones that were kind of like trying to call out advice or like observations where the battle was essentially already over. Like I remember I was fighting skeletons at one point, and skeletons are undead. Fire is good. Fire is good against almost everything in this game except the dragon.
It
So
seems
always
that
use
way.
fire. So my mage just like flambés the skeleton, and this other guy I hired, he's like, "This skeleton is skilled indeed," as it like crumbles to pieces in front of him. Just goofy, goofy crap. Uh,
I I had one of my I was in the Capitol. The Capitol is like the fountain, kind of like in the middle of the market area there.
uh,
And one time my pawn jumped directly into the fountain and immediately called out to me, carefully that you don't get soaked in water. Oh, thanks, pal.
Uh, although, I mean, in some parts of the game, that is good advice because darkness is, a thing to be reckoned with in caves and in dungeons and things. And you have a lantern that you can fill with oil and use to light your way, but if it gets wet, it goes out. So,
Mm.
uh, but if you're just jumping in the fountain, yeah, that sits on you, Pawn. Um, let's see. I remember there was another time where I think I was also fighting skeletons, but there were like lizard men in the area, or my pawn thought there were lizard men in the area, and it was like he kept yelling out, "I'll distract it, strike its tail." And I'm like, "It's a pile of bones, dude." Like,
Nice.
and he would like be hammering on his shield and slowing down. It was like, dude, no. uh, but yeah, in terms of I think we're kind of in like a bug discussion at this point, or at least crazy emergent
Yeah.
gameplay. Um, let's see. Was I the only one who found it weird that at nighttime, sure, zombies and skeletons rise up from the ground, whatever.
Mhm.
Was I the only one who found it weird that they would show up, like emerge from the middle of the road? Like, how many people are burying corpses underneath like the major road to and from the capital?
That seems like a fair point. Yeah. Yeah, if you're making the assumption, which a rightful assumption, that they're actually rising up from a buried gravesite, yeah, that would seem a little strange.
Any other noteworthy stuff that happened to you during during your play?
I well, so yeah, there's a couple examples. Like one thing that going back to like the one save thing
Mhm.
part of it, um, there was one mission where I it was like all the way on the other side of the map. It was like the save the fortress mission,
Oh
if
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember that. So it was like it was on the far western side of the map. And it took me
Mhm.
just forever to get there in the first place. And I think like I was kind of like under leveled to go
Mhm.
there. And I got there and my team got wiped out.
Ooh.
And so the game auto saved because that's what it does. And then I
Mhm.
was over here stuck on this other side of the map with no way to get my teammates back, all by
Oh.
myself in a bunch of like in this area that's like over leveled for me. And I had to walk my ass all the way back to the
Oh
capital
no.
because another thing that's good to mention about this game, there really is no fast travel mechanic. other than through using a consumable item,
Hmm.
which early in the game are not easy to come by.
Not at all.
And I hadn't really figured out the fast travel mechanic yet, even at that point.
Hmm.
And so I literally lost over an hour just
Mm.
trying to get back to a point where I could then regroup and go try this mission again. That one was real rough.
Yeah, and even when you can fast travel, I think it's only to two locations, unless there's more that I just didn't find. Like it's the
You can,
capital.
yeah. So there's the
And,
crystals. You'll occasionally find like a crystal
oh,
running
mhm.
around, and you can put those down, and then that becomes a fast travel point. I
Oh,
figured that out eventually.
I
So I
found some
had
of.
like
Yeah.
4 or 5 points by the end of the game where I could zip around to if I needed to.
Oh, I see. I found a few of those, and it made it sound like they were only usable like to get to and from dungeons, and they were heavy as
Mm,
hell. And so I just
right.
sold them whenever I got them, because there's a weight
Gotcha.
mechanic in this game too. So,
Yes. You always were over encumbered, it felt like.
oh, geez, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in terms of like the one save, it also it did me a favor at one point, like during that first Cyclops fight. It's like, oh, okay, you can climb on its back. Sure, I'll do that. I'll try to maybe get up and stab it in the eye.
Hmm.
So you got like a bunch of like guardsmen that are shooting arrows at it and hacking at it and everything, and I'm on its back trying to like climb further up. It stumbles off a cliff, taking me with it,
So
for like a split second later for the game to start a cutscene where I'm standing on the ground up at the top of the cliff, and the
what?
story's just continuing on.
So you won the fight and survived.
Yep,
That's
when I really
amazing.
should have died.
That's a great one.
uh and and honestly, a lot of the fights, once you have a full cadre of pawns, for me at least, because I was playing a ranged character, a lot of my fights devolved into like staying back, trying to shoot, and then running around trying to revive my pawns as they were knocked down, and
Gotcha.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, which, maybe as different classes it's not as bad, but yeah, trying to distance yourself from the enemies, yeah, it felt like all I was doing was like shooting arrow, shooting arrow, shooting four arrows, shooting an arrow, that kind of thing over and
Mm,
over again. Um, but
yeah,
at least you didn't have to worry about ammunition in this. But go ahead.
that's true. Uh, well, just one thing that just brought to mind for me was, again, the fact that I was trying to save time on this. I wanted to get the feel of the game, but not like struggle through it and not have to really grind out that much. So I play on easy,
Uh,
and let me tell you, this game is not easy on
no.
easy. I, I died many times early in the game, and yeah, I I have to imagine this game is pretty difficult on even on normal.
I think I was playing on normal, and yeah, it would be a matter of I'd turn a corner or go to like a new part of the map, and all of a sudden the bandits that they looked like all the other bandits that I had been just wiping the floor with, all of a sudden I'm turning them into human pin cushions, and they're still coming at me, and it's
Yeah,
like,
they're
this,
suddenly like way harder.
yeah, holy crap, were they
Yeah,
ever? So
yeah.
expect, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, you definitely for a lot of the fights have to actually pay attention to what you're doing. You can't just go run in and just hack and slash. And I mean, there are points where you can do that, but
Mhm.
um, sometimes that will get you dead real quick.
Oh yeah. And I will say some of the abilities are they're stupid but fun. Like the running in made me think of it. So like the warriors have this ability where they'll like run in and essentially do like a shoryuken to knock enemies into the air.
Mm,
And the first time one of my guys did this, ran up to another full-sized human being and just like punched him 20 feet straight up into the air.
it's amazing.
It's like if the glitches in a Bethesda game were intentional, it like worked into the actual mechanics. Just in yeah, seeing them do that to a wolf even better. Just like
Yeah, yeah.
ah
That is one thing about this game. It feels like there's a lot of things they put into this game where they were trying to make it as realistic as possible. And then there's other things in the game which are just the polar opposite, like not realistic at all at the same time.
yeah, just goofy crap.
Mm,
Uh and I'm running out of like stuff on my on my list here. But the one that really stands out to me of what's left is I mentioned I was playing a ranged character, so I eventually upgraded to like the super ranged character. I forgot what the class is called. It might even be sniper. So I was like,
Strider,
str- I was
or
trying.
was
I
that
think
that was the starting one?
that was the starting one, but like the better version of that. So I
Yeah.
was like hitting guys from way further than I should have been able to, and to the point where I was going along like a mountainside and there was more bandits because for a disturbing amount of this game, you're fighting bandits, wolves, and goblins. So get used to that.
Yeah.
So enemy variety could have been a bit better, but anyway, I wipe them all out. Sometimes before my pawns even decide to run up and do anything. So I'm going along, and there's this rock that's just like sitting on the trail, and I get to within like 10 feet of it. All of a sudden, it just like lurches forward of its own volition and like runs me over. Because I'm thinking one of the bandits was supposed to like kick it or something,
Right.
but they
Yeah.
were dead, so it's still
Oh,
triggered.
that's nice.
So be ready for a really weird experience if you play this first one, audience. Um, so you go through, you kill the dragon. There's an interesting twist. Unless you had any more like funny glitch stories to tell before I talk about the end games.
Um, I let's see what I have. There was, I mean, this one wasn't really necessarily a glitch, but there was like, I made note here. There was one scene where, um, uh, there's part with the dragon cult people, and there
Mhm.
was like these zombies like coming up and like started like killing innocent people, and like your character is just like sitting there just in shock, like, oh my god, these zombies, and like a dozen people die, and you're just like sitting there just like frozen in terror, and I'm like, wait, what?
Our hero, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
this is our hero. So yeah.
Uh, yeah. There were times where it really seemed like your guy was out, or girl, depending on what you were playing, was out of their league. Oh
Yeah,
man,
it was a little bit interesting also that there was a lot of voice acting in this game, but
Hmm.
your own character never speaks,
Yeah. I mean,
which
you
was,
get to choose a voice at the beginning, I think.
yeah,
It's just
I
like
think
if you
like
get stabbed or
in
whatever.
right, like battle sounds like
Hmm.
grunts and like this and
Yep.
that, but yeah, you never actually speak, which was interesting.
Especially when like, the Duchess is trying to come onto you and you're just standing there silent. It's
Yeah.
just like uh yeah, there's a lot to be said for silent protagonists, no pun intended. But I do think it would have benefited from some voice acting for the main character because,
Mm.
like, damn near every other line of dialogue from any other NPC is spoken, and that's pretty impressive for a game like this. Um, but yeah, so uh, there is a little more to the game than just killing the dragon and saving the day. But I don't think either you or I actually went through that part. Am I right in that?
I made a college try at it, and so here's my story with that.
Okay.
So um yeah, so as Justin was saying, there's when you kill the dragon, that's not actually the end of the game.
Hmm.
There's like this end game thing where essentially it's allowing you to basically grind for better equipment and to just try and like max out your characters. And there's a little bit of there's some more story stuff to it. There's some more missions that you can go back and like finish other missions and things like that. But um it's yeah, and then the end game, the part where essentially you have to gather the wake stones to
Hmm.
like progress the story. I think you had to get like 20. I think 20
That
sounds
sounds
right.
right. Yeah.
Um, and I had 9 of them. But they were heavy, like heavy AF stones. So I'm like, here, pawn, carry these for me. All
Mhm.
right, everything's good again. Let's get back on the mission. Got in a fight with the cockatrice, and that pawn got turned to stone and disappeared, along with all 9 of my wake stones. And I, I was like, if a pawn gets knocked down and essentially dead in a fight, after the fight's done, you can revive them and move on.
Mhm.
But because they've been turned to stone, they essentially were
Oh,
removed from the game, and I could never get them back.
holy
And that
crap.
was the point where I said, okay, I'm done with the game.
Fair. Because yeah, the story leading up to this end game stuff, it's, I mean, sometimes it's pretty basic, but it does at least feel organic. Uh, but once you get past the what seems like it should be the end of the game, all of a sudden it's like go on this literal fetch quest and for no good reason or a reason that will be revealed later. And I didn't really feel that motivated to do that.
Mm, yeah.
Especially not it wasn't quite as bad as the situation you were in, but I think I got maybe 6 or 7 of the stones, and then I got the room I ended up in was against like essentially a beholder. I know beholders are not. I mean, they're copyrighted by Wizards of the Coast or whatever, but you know, this game's version of one. And some of the fights have been challenging up until this thing, but it could basically one hit most of the pawns I had in my team, and when they were down, I guess it would like hit them again so that they would also vanish. And it's just like, well, I have to go recruit another team after this. And I kept trying that over and over again. And this thing just was, it felt so overpowered that I
Mm,
didn't really feel like continuing on for, what really amounted to a glorified fetch quest.
yeah.
And maybe the post game content is really really amazing and it's worth it, but it feels very it kind of tarnishes the experience leading up to it because it's so mindless and
Yeah.
such a giant spike in difficulty. um
Yeah, I could
so
see it being a fun challenge for someone who was, really into the game and wanted to try and max out their equipment and stuff. And if I didn't have so much other stuff in my backlog of games, I might have been willing to do it. But
yeah,
it was like, if there's not more story here beyond this, I couldn't be asked to do it.
same. Yeah, and it was like I felt the game itself ended on a fairly decent cliffhanger, and then all of a sudden this happens, and I'm like, yeah. Especially with the sequel right around the corner, ending before this whole delve into the pit and find all the stones part of things, I think would have been a stronger choice. Especially if it picked up with well, do we want to do spoilers, or do we want to encourage people to actually play this for themselves? Because I could say
Um,
the twist at the end.
we could, yeah, you can say that for then maybe. We'll just go
Okay,
through here. Yeah.
okay. Um, so yeah, I would say if you do play this, it's a fun experience. I would say, unless you're really gung ho about it and you're really into the combat, stop after you kill the dragon, and a little bit after that point, because the rest of the experience takes a nosedive. I'll go into a bit more detail, but I think. Do we want to do like a rating on this and then dive right into spoiler territory? Are we ready for that, or anything else you wanted to say
I
before
think
then?
I've got little comments that I could make, but I think we've talked it up pretty well here.
Okay. All right. So, you want to go first, or should I?
Sure, I could take it.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, for me, this is a game that is pretty squarely in my wheelhouse. I really enjoy the fantasy RPG type games, and one thing that I think is fair to point about this game as well is it's very a Western style RPG where a lot of them tend to be maybe a little bit more like JRPG style, with a little bit uh more more fantasy to it, where this was like realistic medieval mythological creatures, but a lot of the rest of the stuff was pretty realistic in its look and feel. um and I enjoyed that. I I liked that um it was a bit more of an actual role-playing game and not just like a video game. It didn't quite feel like a video game at times, I think is where I'm trying to get at. Like it felt a bit more, it just has something to it. I'm not even sure exactly where to place it, um but for me it did have its own kind of feel to it. And I did enjoy that a lot. Um it I think if I wasn't in a time crunch for this game, I probably would have continued and done a lot more of the side quests and kind of explored some more of the world and got some more of the story and done some more of those things because I did enjoy the game itself. Um, The combat was a lot of fun. All the different things that you could do during a fight were really cool. The vocation system was essentially like choosing like your, you know, if you're a fighter or an archer or a mage, was pretty cool. You could literally could just change at any point through the game and just like kind of respec your character. I thought that was pretty cool. Um, and all in all, I enjoyed my time with this. It was more challenging than I really wanted it to be. But that's not, I wouldn't say that's a negative, that it's a, you know, challenging game by any stretch. Um, I say the I wrote this down here. The biggest complaint out of this game is that I never got a chance to kill that little a-hole, the jester named Festi. Um, I that's the thing. So like when you meet the Duke, I'll just go ahead and tell the story too. So
Do it.
when you first meet the Duke, his little jester like puts his hat on you and like makes you look like a complete fool, literally. And like everybody's just like laughing at you, and of course your character doesn't speak because he's just like, oh. um and as soon as that like the next that cutscene got done, I went over and hit Bestie with my sword and immediately went to jail. I was like, well, guess I can't do that. And I never got a chance to beat his ass after that. So that was my biggest negative of this game. I if I was giving it a rating out of 10, I wish the story had been better or longer or just had more to it. I would have to dock it a few, you know, a little bit from that. But the overall experience was really enjoyable. I probably, I hadn't put a number on this previously. I probably would give this like a about an 8. It was good. This for me is a classic game, and one that if you're a fan of RPGs, definitely worth looking into.
Okay. Yeah, I went into this not expecting a whole lot. Kind of a pale imitation of like maybe a mix of Dark Souls and Skyrim or something. But I was surprised by the actual product itself, in all honesty. Is it rough around the edges? Oh heck yes.
Mm.
Is it maybe a bit light on story at times? But there's enough stuff going on in the world around you that it makes up for that to some extent. I agree. There is like a sense of realism, or at least believability to this world, where it does feel like an actual setting and not just a bunch of people standing around waiting to give you quests, like you might get in like a Final Fantasy game or something. Um, Combat, I was really surprised at how effective the AI was a lot of the time. I think I did end up recruiting a couple of pawns that were just duds. Like I'm not sure what their creator had done to them, but they were not effective in combat. But by and large, yeah, it's surprisingly well put together. Um, and yeah, I understand why this has the cult classic status that it does, and I'm really looking forward to the sequel. Not sure if I'll be playing it day one necessarily, because, like I said, March is a very packed month for games. But this one, it left a good enough taste in my mouth that, yeah, I understand the popularity. I'm actually going to echo your rating, 8 out of 10. If you maybe minus a point for the stuff that happens after you kill the dragon,
Mm.
maybe 7 out of 10 if you include all of that. But the base experience is just a lot of fun, even for how broken and buggy it can be. Like you see a guy run up to a wolf and like try to grab it, but he like holds it into the ground. I mean, there's a bit of fourth wall breaking joy to that. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of fun. I definitely recommend checking it out as well. Especially if it ties into the events of the sequel. I don't know if it will or not, but I mean, even if it doesn't, it's a good time. Um, so about that ending, spoilers from this
Yes,
point
about the
onward.
ending.
Okay, so this was the one time I felt the main plot really shown. Because up until that point, it seemed pretty bog standard. Dragon attacks, you need to go kill the dragon. Um, and again, spoilers for the big twist at the end. So you go through, you fight, you have an option to kill the dragon and try to rescue your loved one because it kidnaps your loved one as part of like the end game quest. Or you can sacrifice your loved one, and basically the dragon says he'll go away and like leave everything in peace, and you won't have to worry about it. You'll even be able to call yourself a hero because he'll be gone. Um, I decided to save the hedge witch that had taken a liking to me for whatever reason. And yeah, you find out when you get back to the capital, um, the Duke, years and years and years ago, had made the other choice.
Mhm.
And since you've killed the dragon now, apparently his heart has like gone back into him, like yours has gone back into you, and all those years have caught up to him, and he's this decrepit old husk, and he's like,
Yeah,
"You
he is.
son of a bitch, you cursed me! Guards, arrest this person!" That kind of a thing. And he tries to like fight you at one point, and he can barely lift his sword.
That was
Um,
ridiculous. Yeah.
but I thought that was a cool twist. It's like he's not a good person. He sacrificed someone that was supposed to be dear to him for fame and fortune. And then he turns on you when you did the right thing. I don't know what
Mm.
happens if you sacrifice your loved one to the dragon.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know either,
so
but
that would be worth another playthrough just on its own, I think.
yeah,
Um,
that was probably the most interesting part of the story. Like,
mhm.
yeah.
I just wish stuff like that had happened throughout. It would have made the entire narrative so much more engaging. Um, so I hope that they incorporate more of that into the sequel. Because when they really want to do a narrative beat, they know how to do it over at the team that developed this, assuming it's the same team that developed the sequel. Um, I hope they work more of that stuff in because yeah, at its best, this tells a really engaging story. It's just kind of hit or miss when that happens.
Mm.
Um, so I guess any final thoughts on the game before we get to our new traditional closing event?
Um, the use of Old English was both amazing and infuriating. In
That's true.
the number of times that I heard the word ought and was unclear
Yes.
how it was meant.
Yeah, and they did use it in a variety of ways. It's like
Yeah.
combine this item with ought to, or no, with something else to produce ought of use,
Yep.
or and then yeah. So that was interesting. They attempted to do it sort of period realism.
Mm.
So yeah, there's a lot of neat elements to this. And yeah, the lack of fast travel. Well, I mean, now that I know the other crystals did that, it helps a bit. But otherwise, uh, traveling everywhere on foot, not even getting horses, and just like running everywhere.
Right. A
That
horse would
oh
have been
god,
amazing.
it
Oh
would
my
have helped.
goodness.
Um, so on that note, so our 20-second rant. So let's say you find yourself way off somewhere in the West in hostile territory, and
Yes.
everyone you thought you could count on is either dead or fled or just non existent anymore, and you have to find your way back to civilization. If you had, barring a horse, if you had any other like medieval magical means of transportation to get back to somewhere that's safe, what would you choose? Go.
Oh my goodness. Uh well, I'm trying to think what else would in this game that would be fun to use. The Cyclops are pretty cool. You could go pretty far on a Cyclops back. They
Yeah.
were pretty good. Fast
Okay.
travel, I think.
Okay. I think I would have gone Griffin myself. But okay. But what if the Cyclops wants to go the other way?
Oh, like he wants to be more than friends with me?
Sure, if that's the way you want to interpret that, go for it.
I would politely decline and go find a griffin.
All right. Uh, well, there you have it, folks. Dragon's Dogma. I think we both consider it a classic, a cult classic. But hope you had fun. Hope you decide to check out the game. And have a good night.
See y'all next time.